I chose multifamily because it was the closest thing to what I'd already been doing. People want a place to live, to enjoy their life, to create memories, things like that. So multifamily was an easy transition for me to do that. We don't have enough housing in the country. The demand curve is so far out in front of us. It's crazy.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Podcast, where we talk about time freedom, passive investing through real estate, finance, and mindset. Let's dive in.
Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer.
All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into yet another episode of the Freedom Point. I'm so glad you're here with us again today. I've got I'll call it a brother from another mother as a guest on the show today. So really looking forward to chopping it up with Matt Iverson. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. This is exciting. You're right. We have a lot to talk about because we share a lot of commonalities.
We have a lot in common, including being recovering sales professionals. But outside of that, I just wanted to let our listening audience know a little bit more about Matt. So Matt founded Veritas Equity really out of the desire to create more passive income, as well as to take advantage of the incredible tax benefits of real estate investing. Matt, that's exactly why I started Starting Point Capital. I kind of tell folks that I really kind of fell into it really just because I personally was already deploying my own personal cash, in investment opportunities. And I started just telling family and friends and professional colleagues what I was up to. And before you knew it, I had a formal company in place called Starting Point Capital, where I primarily educate, others on the benefits of passive real estate investing, including the tax benefits. So would love to kind of hear more about your journey, your story, into Veritas Equity and what you're focused on today.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because your story is almost a complete replica of my story. Is in 2021 we got hit with a lot of business in my brokerage business. So that's my background is real estate brokerage. I grew up in the business here in Vail, Colorado, and so got into it about 25 years ago. I've been a partner with my family in it, and so, but like everybody, COVID hit. I thought I was going to go out of business. Instead, we had just an absolute boom. And so I started talking to my accountant because I was writing just really painful tax checks those years. And so he started talking to me about investing. He goes, "You're a great sales guy, but you need to start investing in commercial real estate." And I was like, "Well, okay, well, how's that work?" And he started walking me down all the tax benefits and why to do it, aside from the passive income. And half of my clients are successful real estate investors. They've all built their wealth, or they're maintaining their wealth through real estate. So I started talking to them about it, and after a while, they started saying, "Well, if you find a deal, we'll go in with you." So what started as just how do I find good deals for myself ended up turning into a platform that I started investing with a lot of my clients. And so, like you, that's how it got started. That's where we're at now. Now I'm going out and turning my brokerage book into an investment book and looking for great real estate deals.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'd like to maybe kind of drill down a little bit on the tax benefit side. I will regularly tell investors it's not the reason why I got into real estate investing in the first place. I was really chasing diversification, cash flow, appreciation. But, I got a few years into it and I realized, boy, I really need this passive loss depreciation in order to be able to help offset the passive income. So I'd like for you to maybe kind of drill down and talk specifically about the genesis behind you getting into real estate because you were chasing after that depreciation, but you then took it a step further, as it relates to becoming or utilizing the IRS real estate professional status designation to further decrease your tax consequences.
Yeah. Well, that was the light bulb moment for me when my accountant educated me on that side of it. Is obviously we walked through the bonus depreciations that were happening, and that's a very powerful tax benefit. But when we started going down the road as a real estate professional, and if you think you're a real estate professional, ask your accountant and get the details. But I happen to qualify as a real estate professional. So in short, what you as you think about passive income, passive losses, active income, active losses, they are kind of their own buckets, and you can only use passive losses against passive income. The only caveat to that is if you're a real estate professional. So I can take my passive losses from real estate activities and transfer it over to my active commission income. And I don't know of any other industry that allows that. And so when he walked me through that and he showed me how I could reduce my active commission income simply by investing in commercial real estate, game over. I was all in. So we just started moving everything around and started looking at ways to invest and started getting my clients together. And of course now with the new bill, that 100% depreciation is now a permanent tax code. And so going forward, it's just a total game changer.
Yeah, and when Matt talks about bill, he's referring to the big, beautiful bill that Trump signed into law earlier this year. And of course, I want to, this goes without saying, but neither Matt nor I are, certified public accountants, tax professionals. So certainly, seek after your own advice in terms of what works for you there. But it was a game changer for me too, Matt. At the time that my wife and I started leveraging the real estate professional status, I wasn't able to qualify because I had a W 2 job that I was spending, my full time hours at. And so I wasn't able to check that box. But through my wife, we were, because she was able to, spend at least 750 hours per year on active real estate related activities with some of the investments that we, own outright, in addition to the fact that she spent some time, on our private equity real estate company in terms of the administrative, side of that business. So that was a game changer for us. But I'd really like to talk a little bit more, Matt, about kind of what are some of the types of deals that you've been historically investing into. What are the types of asset classes maybe that you've partnered with operators on, where you've deployed your own personal cash, and you've then thus made available to your extended network as well.
Yeah. Well, when I got started in it, obviously the big thing was making sure I knew what I was doing, and the best way to do that is actually to partner with other great operators. I think you and I partnered with similar operators. You're with a phenomenal operator right now, so being able to raise capital and partner with somebody in these deals with a lot bigger track record in this specific niche of multifamily was the only way to do it. It's the only way I could go to my clients, go to my investors, and say, "Hey, we're partnering with somebody who's got dozens of deals under the belt. They know what they're doing. They know how to underwrite it." Because I, I mean, I've been in the business my whole life, and so I actually understand the dangers of bad real estate and good real estate. And it's the smallest nuances that can really ruin a deal. So working with somebody who's worked through those nuances and know how to mitigate them and do all the risk adjusting to make sure that those deals survive any economic turmoil. And right now, we're in a pretty uh, rough time for the multifamily industry, and the great operators are they're continuing to press on, operating very smoothly, keeping the cash flow going, and protecting everyone's capital.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Of vetting the sponsor is priority number one for sure. Just out of curiosity, there's a lot of different asset classes out there. I know you're on the commercial, brokerage side, so you have a lot of exposure to different, asset classes. Why is it that multifamily specifically, is an asset class that you like to personally invest your own, dollars into, as opposed to maybe other asset classes like self storage, assisted living, flex office, industrial, retail, et cetera?
Yeah. So I think I love them all, to be honest. And the funny thing is, a lot of my clients span all these industries. So I have a triple net guy, I have a fast food guy, I have a storage guy. I mean, I can talk to any of these guys over coffee and ask them, and they all think it's the best. Theirs is the best. I chose multifamily because it was the closest thing to being to what I'd already been doing. So multifamily is a place to live. My day job is I'm a broker. I give people places to live. I do it in a resort environment, but a lot of the drivers are similar. Your people want a place to live, to enjoy their life, to create memories, things like that. So multifamily was an easy transition for me to do that. The other thing is it's fundamentally a basic need, and we don't have enough housing in the country. Period. And we can't keep up with it right now. And so I love the fundamental need. It's never going away. There's always going to be demand. We may go through seasons we'll overbuild, but it usually gets absorbed pretty quick. And we all know we're what between 4 and 6 million housing units short of the demand in this country. And I think we only deliver what, 400,000 or 500,000 a year. So I mean, it's just the demand curve is so far out in front of us. It's crazy.
Yeah, and even beyond, that point, there's popular markets in the country like your Phoenix or Dallas or Charlotte, or you pick the city, right? In a lot of cities across America, the average price for a new single family starter home is just way out of touch, or out of reach, I should say, for a lot of individuals. So for a lot of individuals, it makes more sense to, rent a fully renovated unit for 1650 per month, versus taking on a mortgage with taxes and insurance and paying $4,500, per month, plus coming up with a $50,000, down payment.
Yeah. No, it's an affordability issue, and I think what is going on in our market is there's going to be longer renters for longer is kind of what we're looking at. So, and then when you have family formation, they're usually forming within in the condo. So you might have someone who gets married, they're in a one bedroom, they still can't afford to go get their first house. What they'll do is they'll just move over to the two or three bedroom in the same complex, and so we're not losing those renters to house buying right now. They just simply, like you said, simply can't afford it. I just did this exercise with my daughter who's graduating next year. She's interning with me actually this summer, learning the business, and we ran through what a starter home. Of course, this is Vail, Colorado, so what a starter home in Vail would look like, and far cheaper for her to rent in one of the new complexes in the valley than to go buy her first house.
Yep. I don't know if you've heard this before, but the average age of a first time home buyer in 2050, I'm sorry, what was it? The year 2000. Okay. The year 2000, the average age for a first time home buyer was 30 years old. 15 years later, right? Or I should say now 2025, the average age is 38. So we continue to increase the average age. It's just out of touch for a lot of people, right?
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and so that's why I like multifamily is it creates a place for people to live and start their families, and they're longer.
I'm Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in the large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investors. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
So within multifamily, you've got a few different strategies, right? You've got kind of your A class, type of demographic. You've got your B class renter. You've got your C class renter. But even within multifamily, you also have build to rent. You have value add, forced NOI growth as a strategy, or you've got a kind of a buy and hold, 7 to 10 years or more, type of a strategy. So is there a particular, demographic within multifamily or a particular business plan that you favor over others?
Yeah, so I always favor the buy and hold. I think anyone you ask and everyone I talk to, the wealthiest people I talk to usually buy it and just hold it, whatever it's a company, real estate, whatever asset it is. If you have a good buy and hold, everything's for sale all the time. It just always is. When the sales time's right, the time's right. I tend to like suburban, class B plus or class A. I like to look for great neighborhoods, great schools. The core assets are great, but I think because renters are staying in them longer, we're going to start seeing people leave the core assets and start going out into the suburbs where they're going to have families in the rental complexes, and they're going to want to go out and walk to the park. They're going to want to take their kids to the local school. So I tend to like when I look at deals, I look at stuff in nice suburban neighborhoods around good school systems.
Yep, that makes total sense to me. So I know that, you and I both kind of come from a sales, background, sales pedigree. Sales guys are usually surrounded by other sales guys. And, whether you're a sales consultant or a technology sales guy or a real estate broker, right? It's all sales. And I know that, you and I both periodically bring investment opportunities, to our personal and professional networks. And I know that you're a big fan of not sounding salesy or pitching, right? Pitching your customer. And this is true, by the way, for anybody that's listening to this call, whether you're a small business owner, or you're a sales professional in some way. We all know that it's about rapport. So how is it, Matt, that you kind of, quote unquote, sell an investment opportunity without coming across as being too salesy?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a great question. I've always in my job as a sales, my sales pitch is usually just based on knowledge. Like I just try to be the most knowledgeable person about the whatever I'm selling. So if I'm looking at a multifamily deal, I really dig into the deal and make sure that I understand it inside and out, because the questions are going to come hard and fast from my investors, and I need to be able to answer them. So really, it's not. If someone's selling you into a deal but can't answer the fundamental, well, where's the traffic patterns? What's the occupancy been like? What's the historical occupancy in that sub market? I think that's the key to raising capital, selling your deal to anybody is just know it inside and out. And if you don't, you don't know everything all the time. Just be ready to say, you know what, I'll go find that out and then get back to them. So my philosophy is always, if somebody asks me a question I don't have the answer, I have to get back to them within 30 minutes, no matter what, even if I have the answer or not. Just I'm still working on it or I have the answer. So that's kind of just a basic, I guess you call it customer service, kind of the lost art of customer service, right?
Yeah, well, they do say that the secret sauce is in the follow up for sure. But yeah, and absolutely, building that authentic and genuine relationship with somebody. I mean, the truth is that people don't do business with companies; they do business with people, right? And so, finding a way to genuinely provide value to someone in a meaningful, authentic, and genuine way is how business ultimately gets done. I'd love for you to maybe talk a little bit about this resort that I believe you fixed and flipped, and you did pretty well, with that. Can you walk us through that project and what made it such a big success?
Well, so it wasn't so much a resort. It was a couple single family homes. So we were kind of. I've always been a serial fixer and flipper in these resort areas. So we look for great homes in resort properties, ski and ski out, or on the golf course. And so we typically go and find the ugliest house in the block, and the thing that most people would just shy away from. And my wife and I'll go buy them. And I have a lot of resources. I've been in the business. I have a family members who's an interior designer, and we literally go in and remodel these homes. Usually, we'll move into them for a couple years, let it marinate, but then we'll sell it out. I'm a broker, so I'm always watching what's going on. And a lot of times, I'll come home and say, "Hey, I think I got a buyer for our house. They're going to pay X," and we've done very well. We've over doubled our equity every deal we've ever done. But again, it's getting into and in multifamily, it's the same thing. Is you're getting into the mind of your end user. How are you remodeling the house? Who's going to use it? And then you do the project from there. Instead of I've always had two types of developers I've worked with in my market, and I've done a lot of consulting. And the guys that don't do well are kind of the don't worry about it. If I build it, they'll come mentality, versus the guys who sit down and say, well, what are people buying? And that's what I'm going to deliver. It's not a prideful, arrogant thing, because at the end of the day, they'll always do better. Same thing with multifamily. Well, who's renting? How do we cater to the renter? How do we keep it full? What are we delivering? And then just match that up with returns for the investor, and can't go wrong.
Yeah, makes total sense. I see this happen all too often in my own life, and this isn't necessarily just an investing, issue that I see taking place. It's making decisions just in general in life, right? And it's this kind of, it's kind of this, analysis by paralysis, or this fear of doing something, right? I know that it takes a little bit of overcoming fear to decide that you want to start fixing and flipping houses. It takes overcoming some fear, to decide to invest passively, into a real estate deal, or bet on yourself and go scratch your entrepreneurial itch and go start a business, right? All those things, there's fear in place. So how is it that, you personally, have been able to overcome, fear in the decisions that you've made?
Yeah, yeah, and I think a fear is a big big deal. It still is today. And you look at the industry today, there's a lot of people that are afraid of it because they're hearing the nightmare stories. Um, I think one thing, risk isn't risk if you've done the research. I worked with a developer once. He goes, "We really, it's nothing's risky if you've actually done the research. There are things out of our control for sure. There's geopolitical, there's wars, there's elections, there's things that are out of our control. But if you have done the work and shored up all the elements that you have control over, you really understand it, and you make decisions accordingly, you can reduce the fear a lot. The other thing is partnering up with other people that know what they're doing. To say, hey, I've been in the industry for over 25 years. I've seen 3 or 4 different cycles. I know what I'm looking for now. Right now, we're learning what went wrong and how to start buying deals going forward to mitigate for major changes. And so if the great operators are learning on the fly right now. Like, well, that didn't work out in the last 3 years. How do we move forward and make sure these deals are well shored up to reduce the risk, which then reduces the fear?
Yeah, makes total sense. And eventually, sometimes you just got to get out of the starting blocks. Once you've kind of reduced, or mitigated against, some of that risk. And I like to basically break risk down in kind of three buckets. Personally, you've got operation risk, execution risk, and market risk. The market risk is the things that you talked about. There's elections, there's wars, there's high interest rate environment. There's tariffs, there's you name it, right? So that's kind of the market risk side and how the operator or you personally are mitigating against that market risk. But outside of that, the rest of it is having confidence in yourself. When it comes to operations risk and when it comes to execution of a business plan risk. So really appreciate that. I'd like to talk to that. I'd like for you to talk to that. Individual that's looking to transition from being in a transaction based environment like sales, for example. I mean, my guess is you're paid the same way that I was paid in the technology, sales space. You eat what you kill, right? So let's talk to that individual about, getting off of that hamster wheel, escaping the dependence on the W 2 and building reoccurring income by investing in cash flowing real estate investments. What should that person do to get started for the first time on changing their trajectory?
Yeah. Well, I think the big one I tell everyone this is to understand it's not overnight. Passive income, building a passive income stream is a long term game, and you got to stack wins. So taking your first investment, and a few of my investors in the last few deals were first time multifamily investors, and we their first deal isn't creating financial freedom right off the bat, right? But what they found is they did the first deal, they started getting their income checks, and then they did the second deal, and then they had 2 income checks going, and they started stacking their wins. So just understand that the game is about stacking cash flows. And then I'd say the big one is vetting the operators. Make sure you're going out with somebody who's got a good track record. Talk to somebody who can literally tell you about a deal that went bad. I think that's the number one rule is you got to talk to an operator and say, hey, what deal went bad? Tell me about it, and what did you do about it? How did you fix it? Did it go away, and what did you do doing going forward? Because every investment, nobody has 100 bets 1,000, right? Everyone, there's a lot of things that are going to affect that investments. So everyone has a bad investment. So talk to them about that. I talk to my operators all the time, and the guys that are honest about it, the guys I'll go in with, period. So
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that. The more investments that I continue to make and double down, there's operators in the space that I will never ever invest with again. And the main reason why is transparency, right? If you're not fully transparent with the investors that kind of bought into your, vision, bought into your business plan, your playbook, your operations, your team, right? If you're not being fully, transparent with those equity, providers, then good luck trying to raise money on your next deal because I'm out.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's transparency is a big deal. Communication is a big deal. Good, bad, or ugly. Just tell me what's going on. What are you doing to fix it? And then um, I'll invest the next go round. So yeah, no, I think that's a big one. I always say, and we've said it a few times. You said it a few times. Is taking action. And I always say you also have to celebrate the little wins along the way. And I was joking with my wife. I said after we stacked a few investments a few years ago, I came home and I was like, all of our utilities in our house are paid for every month by our passive investments. Like we're not financially free, but I'm not those are hours I'm not having to spend to pay for my utilities. Now we've recently hit that all of our housing costs are paid for through passive income. And so, celebrate those and just celebrate them for what they are. Like my bills are taken care of on my utility bills are taken care of. My mortgage is finally taken care of. And eventually my lifestyle is taken care of. And it's just a stack.
Yeah, stacking those wins together and, celebrating those different, line items, those line item expenses, with passive income, over time will eventually, like you said, they'll get you to whatever your goal is. But you have to have a goal, and then you have to, reverse engineer, the action steps that you need to take to get there. So, if you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to know how to get started, of course, reach out to Matt Iverson.
You bet. And yeah, and I will tell you, it's one of my goals with my investors is to get 25, 50 guys that do maybe 100,000 twice a year, but we do it every year. They're high income earners, they're doctors, they're salespeople, and every year they just stack another one in another deal. And I just keep providing great deals, keep working with great operators, and after a while, suddenly it just clicks. It's just like, oh, we're free. All of our income's free. It's totally taken care of. So, especially my doctors, they have diminishing skill sets, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, that's good. That's good for you to kind of highlight that as well. This type of an investing strategy, is not something that is going to change your trajectory, in 3 to 5 years, but I am living proof that it can in 5 to 10. So it does take a little bit of time, for that momentum to start building and, compounding, investment upon investment. And to your point, some deals are going to be home runs and some deals are going to be base hits, right? But the truth is that we don't really know what that, we don't really know what that asset is going to be worth in 3 to 5 years from right now, because it's worth what somebody else is willing to pay for it. And we don't know what somebody's willing to pay for that, at this stage, in the kind of the capital raising phase, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I was thinking about getting a T-shirt. There's hashtag equity happens, cash flow is planned. So I've been in the equity side of the business for a very, very long time, where we'd buy a house, fix it up, and we'd flip it, and that was all equity based. I've also seen what happens when the music stops in those deals as well. Luckily, they're our homes, so we just lived in them longer. But yeah, no, I think if your investment plan is based purely off of equity events, it's probably not a good place to be. But if you can really buy cash flow deals, that's where you want to be.
That's right. That's right. Well, amen to that. Matt, what would be maybe one or two different ways that our listening audience can connect and engage, with you further offline?
You bet. Well, so you can always go to my website, veritasequity.net. I do have an icon there, join my investor club. That'll Once you sign up, you'll get a series of educational emails. You'll be able to see the deals that we bring on board. They're few and far between right now. We're pretty strict on our underwriting, but they're going to happen. I think they're going to happen more often. You're always welcome to email me at my email, matt@veritasequity.net as well.
That sounds great. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes for the episode. Matt, really appreciate you bringing the heat and providing the value today.
Always a great pleasure to be here with you, Jeremy.
And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into yet another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.